The hum of the council chamber echoed as Admiral Janet Briggs stepped into the massive hall, a place where the most powerful minds and species in the galaxy gathered. The room, shaped like a vast oval, was a marvel of design, constructed from material stronger than any ship's hull, adorned with translucent panels that displayed the cosmic wonders of the universe outside. The other representatives were already present, each sitting in their designated places. The Vraxians, by far the most powerful and feared species in the galaxy, took the central seats, their elegant, alien forms radiating an air of quiet superiority. But it was not the Vraxians that everyone noticed. It was Janet Briggs, the human representative, who stood out. Despite the Vraxians' towering presence, their shimmering metallic skin, and their unearthly beauty, Janet stood alone in her quiet confidence, her posture erect as always, but her eyes observant, scanning the room without a hint of arrogance. She walked calmly, deliberately toward her usual seat. Toward the back, the other species exchanged glances, some curious, others perplexed. For years they had been studying humans. They couldn't quite understand them. Why did humans always insist on sitting in the back, as if they had something to hide? The idea of sitting at the edges, far from the center of power, seemed illogical to the other races. The Vraxians had no such concept. They always occupied the center, the source of their immense power. The other species followed their lead, forming a circle around them. But the humans, they never took the front row. Janet's seat at the back was a deliberate choice, one made for reasons that went far beyond mere habit. The Galactic Council was convened once again, and this time the stakes were higher than ever. The anomaly in deep space that had emerged out of nowhere had caused widespread panic. The energy readings were unlike anything ever encountered. Not a single species, not even the Vraxians, with all their advanced technology, had been able to make sense of it. It was too unpredictable, too powerful to ignore. In fact, the anomaly had already begun to show signs of disruption. Star systems near its location were starting to experience gravitational shifts, and entire planetary systems were being drawn closer toward the disturbance. Space travel in the region had become treacherous, with ships unable to navigate through without risking destruction. A sense of urgency had gripped the galaxy. No one knew what the anomaly was, where it came from, or what its ultimate effect would be. But the Council was determined to find out. The hum of voices softened as the Vraxian Chancellor Vakra rose to address the Council. His smooth, pale skin reflected the light of the stars outside, and his golden eyes scanned the room with the kind of authority that made even the most powerful representatives pause. "We are here." Vakra's voice boomed through the telepathic link, his thoughts flowing like a ripple across the minds of those present. "Because a new and unexpected threat has emerged. We do not understand its origins nor its intentions, but we do know this. It is a force unlike any we have ever encountered. We must approach this anomaly with the utmost care, but also with all the power we possess." A murmur rippled through the room as the representatives from various species exchanged uncertain glances. Some feared the anomaly's unknown properties. Its gravitational pull had already torn apart several scouting ships. Others feared that this might be an ancient weapon or something even more dangerous, something beyond their comprehension. Admiral Briggs remained seated, her expression neutral. She was listening carefully, but she was not reacting to the mounting tension in the room. She knew how the Council operated, how every species scrambled to take charge, to be the one to offer a solution. She had witnessed it before. The Vraxians were the most formidable military force in the galaxy, but even they could not deny that the human species had made significant strides in dealing with unknown threats. Unlike the Vraxians, who relied heavily on brute force, humans had become known for their ingenuity, adaptability, and their ability to solve problems that others had given up on. But why did they always sit at the back? Vakra's eyes settled on Janet. He knew she would speak, as she always did when it was time for reason over rash action. But there was something about the way she conducted herself that had always intrigued him. Humans didn't rush to the front row. They didn't need to. They had an uncanny ability to listen, to observe, to make decisions with a level of calmness that often left other species in awe. "Admiral Briggs," Vakra said, his voice sharp but respectful, "you have suggested before that we approach this anomaly with caution. You have experience, I'm sure, in matters of this nature, but surely you must agree that this time we must act swiftly. The lives of millions may be at stake." Janet's eyes flickered toward the Vraxian Chancellor, her gaze unwavering. "I do agree," she said quietly, her voice carrying easily across the chamber. "But the question is not whether we act, but how we act. Rushing in without understanding the full scope of the anomaly will only put more lives at risk. We need a measured approach." Ralkar, the Vraxian general, sneered from across the table. His towering armored figure filled much of the space, and his deep growl was enough to send a ripple of discomfort through the room. Measured approach? A human way of thinking, no doubt, but the galaxy has never faced a threat like this. The time for caution has passed. The anomaly is growing stronger by the day. If we do not act immediately, we risk losing everything. The tension in the room thickened as the Vraxian general's words hung in the air. The other species, especially those with smaller militaries, looked nervously at one another. Some were intimidated by the Vraxians' forceful attitude. Others, however, were uneasy about acting too hastily. Janet, however, was unmoved. "We don't know what this anomaly is capable of," she said, her voice calm but firm. "We cannot afford to let fear drive us into a rash decision. What if the anomaly is not a weapon? What if it's something we've never encountered before, something beyond our current understanding?" Her words hung in the air like a challenge, one that even the Vraxians could not easily dismiss. Vakra's golden eyes regarded Janet thoughtfully. For the first time in years, he felt a flicker of doubt. He had always been the one to push for direct action, to seize control of situations before they spiraled out of hand. But Janet's approach, this quiet confidence, this refusal to rush into the unknown, made him pause. "Admiral Briggs, you continue to surprise us," Vakra said, his voice softer now. "Perhaps there is wisdom in your words. Perhaps it is time we considered a different course of action." The room fell silent, and for the first time, the Vraxians were not the loudest voices in the room. The human way of thinking had captured the attention of those who had long been accustomed to ruling the galaxy through sheer force. It was a humbling moment, one that would shift the dynamics of the council forever. As the conversation continued, Janet remained seated at the back. She had no need to stand in the spotlight. Her words, her reasoning were enough to sway the entire council, and as she listened to the ongoing debates, she knew that the next phase of the galaxy's greatest challenge would require not just strength, but a deeper understanding of what lay beyond the stars. This is just the beginning of Chapter 1. The dialogue and actions could be expanded further, and additional narrative elements can be woven in for the 3,000-word target, depending on how you'd like the story to develop. Let me know if you'd like me to proceed or adjust any parts. The hum of the Galactic Council chamber was punctuated only by the soft clicks of data terminals activating. High above the immense hall, a colossal projection displayed an image of the galaxy, a swirling mass of stars and planets, each glistening in the inky expanse of space. It was magnificent, yet unsettling. An anomaly, a disturbance in the cosmic flow, loomed just beyond the farthest reaches of the Milky Way. The various species, each at their designated seats in the large oval chamber, appeared to be at the height of tension. The Vraxians sat at the center, their imposing figures framed by the curvature of the room. Despite their nearly divine technological prowess, they seemed as unsure as any other race in this chamber. The anomaly threatened all they had worked for, everything they knew. At the back of the room, Admiral Janet Briggs sat with quiet composure, her fingers lightly tracing the edge of her datapad. She had been invited to this meeting as a representative of humanity, but she often felt a quiet, almost paradoxical sense of detachment in these situations. The galaxy was full of immense, terrifyingly powerful species. The Vraxians, with their technological supremacy and almost godlike stature, were particularly formidable. But humanity had something no other species had: an ability to understand chaos, to adapt, and to face the unknown with a kind of calm that could be, at times, unnerving. In the heart of the room, Vakra, the Vraxian chancellor, telepathically addressed the council. His thoughts, projected with precision, reverberated throughout the room. The Vraxian's broad, regal frame sat comfortably in his seat, exuding the quiet power of a leader who is used to being the center of attention. "We gather today in the face of something unknown, a phenomenon that threatens our very existence," Vakra began, his voice resonating in the minds of all present. "A new force has appeared at the edge of the galaxy, something far beyond anything we have encountered. Its gravitational anomalies have already begun pulling entire star systems out of orbit. We are in a race against time to determine its nature and neutralize it." As his voice echoed through the chamber, images of the anomaly appeared on the projection screen. A swirling mass of energy, chaotic and unpredictable, wrapped itself around a star that was on the verge of collapsing. The readings were incomprehensible. Even the Vraxian technology that could detect the subtlest shifts in energy had failed to interpret the anomaly's true nature. The other representatives shifted in their seats, uneasy. Of the species, the Zelthar, their sleek black exoskeletons reflecting the light, muttered among themselves in their guttural language. Though they were a diplomatic race, they were the first to recognize the power imbalance. They looked at the Vraxians, whose territorial dominance could not be denied. But they also looked at the humans, small, young, yet remarkable in their adaptability. They had seen the humans come from a primitive world, evolving rapidly in only a few hundred years. In their quiet strength there was something that demanded respect, even if it wasn't immediately understood. Janet sat at the back, calm as always. Her dark hair was pulled back into a practical braid, her uniform simple yet neat. She had no desire for grandeur, and she understood that in this room, the central seats were not for those who wanted to lead by force. Instead, her goal was to show that humanity's true strength was not in sheer power, but in adaptability, in restraint, and in the ability to think critically when others were ready to panic. "Admiral Briggs." Vakra's telepathic voice snapped her from her reverie. "Your species has always approached the unknown with caution. What is your counsel? You have seen the anomaly's effects. What are we dealing with?" She looked up, meeting Vakra's probing gaze. "I would advise caution. We have no idea what this phenomenon is, but it doesn't appear to be a weapon. It's not something we can destroy outright, certainly not with brute force. There are far too many unknowns." Ralkar, the towering Vraxian general who had spoken earlier, sneered from his seat at the other end of the room. His deep, gravelly voice boomed as he stood. "Caution! We have seen what this anomaly can do. We have already lost several ships. The time for caution is past." We must act immediately before we lose more." Janet allowed the silence to stretch before answering. "Acting without understanding only leads to greater risk. Your ships have already been drawn into the anomaly's gravitational pull. What if the anomaly is more than we think? What if it's not simply a physical force, but something we cannot see, something that manipulates space itself?" He Chamber went silent. Janet's voice, soft but firm, cut through the noise in a way that others could not. "We should be working together to learn more, not rushing headlong into it." Her words hung in the air, and for a long moment, Vakra's golden eyes locked onto hers. The Vraxian Chancellor considered her counsel. It was not the kind of immediate military response he was accustomed to, but it was not entirely without merit. "Perhaps," Vakra said finally, "we have underestimated the nature of this anomaly. We will initiate a series of exploratory missions, led by human expertise. Your people are known for their ability to adapt under pressure. We will need your leadership in navigating this uncharted territory." As the council discussions continued, Janet felt the weight of the decision settle over her. The mission to investigate the anomaly had officially been authorized, but she knew that the real work was just beginning. The galaxy's most powerful species were following her lead, not with force, but with trust in the human approach to problem-solving. It was a humbling responsibility, one that Janet did not take lightly. The meeting broke for a short recess, and the representatives dispersed to smaller discussion groups. Janet stood from her seat, stretching her legs, and walked to the balcony that overlooked the council chamber. Her thoughts swirled like the stars outside the massive windows. There was no denying that humanity had been thrust into a unique position. She had often wondered why the Vraxians, despite their superiority, had always underestimated the human. Was it because humans didn't sit at the front of the room? Didn't command the attention of the others with their sheer presence? The Vraxians, despite all their power, couldn't understand the human ability to remain composed in the face of uncertainty. It was a power in itself. "You've done well," came a voice from behind her, breaking her reverie. She turned to see Vakra approaching, his steps silent but graceful. His golden eyes glimmered in the light of the distant stars. He had a habit of moving with a purpose, always calculating, always observing. "Thank you, Chancellor," she said simply. "But the real work begins now. We have no idea what we're walking into, and the last thing we need is to make decisions based on incomplete data." Vakra regarded her quietly for a moment. "I have been studying your species for some time, Admiral. Your calm in the face of chaos is unlike anything I have seen. It is not that you lack fear. It is that you know how to control it. That is why I have agreed to follow your counsel." Janet didn't respond right away, her eyes drifting to the stars outside. "The galaxy's greatest strength is not its might," she said. "It is the willingness to learn, to adapt, to work together even when the odds seem insurmountable. But we must be careful, we cannot rush into this." Vakra's voice softened, though the seriousness of his words remained. "It seems the humans may possess an insight we have overlooked. Perhaps after all, there is much we can learn from your species. But we must act quickly. If we do not neutralize this anomaly, we risk more than just our planets. We risk the stability of the entire galaxy." The Vraxian leader paused before adding, "I hope we can rely on your expertise, Admiral. Your species is small, but you have proven that size does not always equal strength." Admiral Briggs nodded solemnly. "We will proceed with care, Chancellor, and we will do so together. I trust that we will find the answers we need if we work as one." The silence that followed was not uncomfortable, but rather a moment of mutual understanding. Both understood the gravity of the task at hand. As the Council's discussion resumed, the representatives of each species gathered to formalize their strategy. The human-led exploration mission would begin within hours, and the first ships would be launched to investigate the anomaly directly. Janet made her way to the communications deck, her mind still reeling from the exchange. She knew the risks. Humans had always been quick to act, but there was a deep understanding within her that made this situation different. The anomaly was more than a cosmic force. It was a puzzle, a riddle, one that she would have to solve with all the resources of the galaxy at her disposal. The galaxy's most powerful species had trusted humanity with the first steps toward understanding a cosmic enigma. And in that quiet moment, sitting at the back, Janet Briggs realized that their greatest strength lay not in their size or military might, but in their ability to sit back, watch, and think their way through the most difficult challenges. Certainly, I will now expand the story into Chapter 3, the mission, providing more detailed world-building, character development, and narrative progression. This chapter will focus on the preparations, the insights gained by the human delegation, and the first steps taken to investigate the anomaly. Given the word count goal, this chapter will be extended in a way that not only adds complexity to the situation, but also delves deeper into the challenges the humans and the command center was a labyrinth of consoles, holographic displays, and data terminals, all pulsing with information from the farthest reaches of space. Outside, the stars shone brightly, each a beacon of possibility or peril. As Admiral Janet Briggs stood at the center of the room, she felt the weight of her decision press upon her shoulders. The human mission to the anomaly was no longer theoretical, it was real. And it was about to begin. The space station surrounding the council chamber had been transformed into a hub of activity. Humanity's brightest engineers, physicists, and military strategists were in the thick of the preparations. Yet, despite the feverish activity, there was a deep sense of purpose that permeated the air. Janet's role as the leader of this mission was critical, but it was not one she had sought out. Rather, it had been thrust upon her by the very species she had once quietly observed from the back of the room. The anomaly loomed larger in the minds of the council members as their faces flickered onto the screens in front of her. The Vraxians, always at the center of such discussions, now found themselves in uncharted territory. They had relied on their immense military might for centuries, yet now they had deferred to the calm, calculating approach of the humans. "I have assembled a team," Janet's voice echoed through the briefing room. Her deep brown eyes scanned the faces of her officers. People who, like her, had come from all walks of life, but were now united in their singular mission. "We will travel to the anomaly, study it, and gather data. Our task is not to engage it directly, but to understand it. Any confrontation will only happen once we fully comprehend what we are dealing with." There were murmurs of agreement, but also a sense of unease in the room. This was not the kind of mission humanity was accustomed to. Their fleet was known for its tactical precision, its adaptability in combat. But this situation required more than simple reaction. This was exploration. This was a race to understand the unknown before it consumed everything they knew. Lieutenant Anna McCabe, a brilliant astrophysicist and one of the key members of the crew, leaned forward. "The gravitational readings we've received are unlike anything we've ever seen. The anomaly is warping space-time itself. If it continues to grow, it will devour everything in its path." "And that's why we need to be careful," Janet said, her gaze firm. "We've already lost too much to this unknown. Now we must find the answers, not rush in like the Vraxians would." Anna nodded. "We'll have to monitor the anomaly closely. Our ships are equipped with the latest scanning technology, but if it has the power to bend space, it could also distort the data we're receiving." "We'll need to think fast," said Commander Elias Core, Janet's second in command. His sharp features and cold blue eyes betrayed no sign of the pressure he was feeling, but Janet knew him well. The burden of leadership in the face of this unknown challenge was one he had not yet fully accepted. "We can't afford to lose valuable time. Once we get within range, we'll have to make decisions quickly." Janet's lips curved into a small, knowing smile. "That's why we're here. We're not just here to follow orders. We're here to think when others cannot." The command room fell into an uneasy silence. As much as they all respected Janet's leadership, they knew this mission would demand more from them than they were prepared to give. The gravity of their task was palpable, the tension in the room thickening as they awaited the final orders. "Prepare the fleet," Janet ordered, her voice steady. "We launch in 3 hours. We leave nothing to chance." The fleet was a masterpiece of human engineering, a collection of ships, each built for specific purposes: reconnaissance, scientific study, and, if necessary, defense. The flagship, SS Endeavour, was a sleek, advanced warship designed for rapid deployment and long-range travel. The crew was a mixture of human soldiers, scientists, and engineers, each with their own skill set, but all of them were committed to the same goal: understanding the anomaly. On board the SS Endeavour, Janet stood at the bridge, watching as the final preparations took place. The ship was a marvel of human ingenuity, bristling with technology designed to withstand the unpredictable challenges of space travel. The bridge itself was a stark contrast to the chaos of the command center. It was calm, almost serene, with the view of space outside through the large windows giving the crew a constant reminder of the vastness of the galaxy. "Captain Briggs," said Lieutenant McCabe, her fingers flying across the holographic interface as she adjusted the sensor readings. "We're almost at full readiness. All systems are go, but the anomaly's location has shifted again. The data is starting to get chaotic. We might be dealing with something beyond our current understanding." "Understood," Janet replied. "But we have to move. We can't afford to wait for it to stabilize. We're moving forward. Any signs of danger, we adapt. Any anomalies in the data, we document. But above all, we stay focused." As the countdown to departure continued, Janet surveyed her crew. There were young faces filled with fear, seasoned veterans hiding their concerns, and others who had long since learned to mask their emotions. But despite the different reactions, there was one thing that bound them all together: the drive to succeed. Elias Core, the ship's commander, approached Janet. "You're sure about this, Admiral? We don't have all the data. We don't even know what we're walking into." "I'm sure," she said simply, "and even if we don't have all the answers, we're better off doing something than nothing." The engines of the SS Endeavour roared to life, and the massive ship slowly began to lift off from the station. As it passed through the docking bay doors, the sheer size of the fleet was revealed in all its glory. Dozens of ships, each maneuvering into position as they prepared to leave the station behind and venture toward the heart of the unknown. Janet's voice echoed over the comms as she addressed the entire fleet. "This is Admiral Briggs. All ships are to proceed with caution. We do not know what lies ahead, but we are humans. We adapt, we learn, and we survive. Stay sharp and stay together. Let's bring back the answers." Into the unknown. As the fleet traveled deeper into the heart of the anomaly, Janet's thoughts drifted to the conversation she had had with Vakra. The Vraxian leader had trusted her judgment, and now humanity was thrust into the role of leaders in an intergalactic mission. But there was still so much they didn't understand about the anomaly. How long would it grow? What was its purpose? Could it be neutralized? The data coming in from the lead ships was troubling. The gravitational forces around the anomaly were stronger than anticipated. Even with their advanced sensors, they could only glean partial information, enough to know that any attempt to move too close without a solid plan would result in catastrophic failure. "Admiral!" McCabe's voice crackled over the comms. The readings are off the charts. We're detecting intense fluctuations in the fabric of space itself. If the anomaly continues to expand, it could tear the very space around it apart. We need to pull back now." Janet's eyes narrowed. She knew the risks of pulling back. The longer they waited, the less time they had to gather the critical data they needed. They would be caught in the gravitational pull soon, unable to escape. "No," Janet said firmly. "We push forward. We can't afford to be intimidated by it. We need to learn what this thing really is." Fleet continued its journey, inching closer to the heart of the anomaly. As they neared, strange phenomena began to occur. Disruptions in communications, flickers of light that distorted the very air around them. The anomaly, it seemed, was alive. The Endeavour shuddered as it crossed into the gravitational threshold of the anomaly's influence. The crew looked to their screens, but the data was becoming increasingly unstable. Suddenly, a harsh tone rang throughout the ship. "Admiral, we're experiencing power surges. The gravitational field is distorting our energy systems. We may not be able to hold position much longer." Janet's eyes flashed with determination. "Do whatever you can to stabilize the systems. We're not backing down. This mission will succeed." As the SS Endeavour and the fleet pressed forward, the crew felt the full force of the unknown bearing down on them. Janet stood resolutely at the helm, aware that the galaxy was watching. They were not just fighting for survival, they were fighting for knowledge. But what would they discover when they crossed the threshold of the unknown? Would they emerge victorious with the answers they so desperately sought? Or would they find themselves facing something far worse than they ever imagined? The answer, as always, lay beyond the stars, in the heart of the anomaly.